Holy! This is the third time I've gone live. YouTube made a little change and I did not know. So all of the live streams were scheduled as private and I couldn't figure out what was going on. So, and then when I scheduled a new one, it was scheduled as private too. So they've changed something. So sorry about that. I think I just spammed the guild a few times. But welcome. I'm so glad you guys made it. It's a little echoey in here because I'm all keyed up now. So, hi, Amy. Yep, you made it. Yeah, you jumped through all the fiery hoops. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Hillary. Hi, Aisha. Hi, Sylvia. Hi, Donna. Aisha, are you in the car? You said you had things. Good morning, Dawn. How's it going? Okay, Tiffany, I'll try. Yeah, you were... Me, for the first time ever last night, when I went to go to bed, Tiffany was in the guild. And I was like, why are you awake? Tornado stuff. And I get it. And I felt like I can't go to bed with Tiffany, you know, hunkering down for a tornado. Because I know how that feels. Not the tornado part, but just fire stuff, you know. Hi, Sylvia. Thanks for the hug. Or is it a thumbs up? I can't tell. Finally, yes. Okay. So I thought I would kind of quickly go through fitting bodices this month. Now, I'm not going to go all the way through. I think this will be very consumable. But, and I know there's lots of really proper ways to go about things with horizontal balance lines and things like that. But you're sewing for you. And I really think that if you don't do anything crazy, you can fit things pretty quickly, and you don't have to fit them so that they are 100% perfect. Like, just stop at a certain point, you know what I mean? Make a garment, wear it. If it's something you plan to make a lot of, I think making it in real fabric as soon as possible and living with it and then revisiting the pattern. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get it right. So anyway, it was 7 a.m. Oh my goodness, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, Tiffany. I was like, gosh, I would like a natural disaster that is over quickly, but at the same time, like, you know, stick with the natural disasters, you know? I don't know. I really don't. I have a lot of thoughts about that, obviously. But, okay, so I'm using the Lenox Shirtdress by Cashmerette, and you know, the details don't really come through on their models there, but it is a princess seam bodice. It's got a button band, a little waistband, there's a back yoke with princess seams as well. It's very, very fitted in the photos, like it's very close fitting. And I thought I would make it for Trixie here and, you know, fit it really quickly. So we're going to fit this side because this side was cut incorrectly. This piece right here was cut incorrectly. I have the wrong version of the pattern. But this one is going to be okay. I know it's not like great that happened, but I had already finished everything, all my samples, so it'll be fine, I promise. So, because I've already done all these changes to the pattern and cut out the final muslin so you get to see the result. And I thought I'd show you some of the things that I noticed. So originally I was like, you know, this isn't too bad. I knew the armhole and sleeve were going to be a problem. It's a very, can you see okay? It's a very fitted bodice, right? It's a very fitted bodice with a shoulder seam right up top. Like it's a proper set-in sleeve armhole, proper set-in sleeve. Historically, for me personally, a lot of the Cashmerette patterns, my shoulders are broader than the patterns, and that's the one change that I would do if I were fitting it before I made the sewing tutorials for them. But I usually don't take the time to fit it perfectly for me because at the end of the day, it's a job and I need to get their video done. So you're gonna see that it's pretty narrow on Trixie here. I'm really hoping you can see that, but like right here. And you can also see that it's really high up on the neck. Her neck is like down here. Hi, Jan. Oh, you made it. Oh, good, good, good. Okay. Jan, I saw you comment in the first live stream. This is the third time I've gone live because those were set to private. I don't know how you saw that. Maybe because it was in the guild. Private usually means you have to have an email link to the video, so I don't know what they did. Anyway, the back overall, it looks pretty darn good. We have this little thing here that I'm gonna address. Also, the side seam is here. And you can see the side seam on Trixie. Trixie, it's more in line with this seam here on the armhole, and the side seam of this bodice is here where my fingertips are pointing. So you can kind of see it goes back. You got an email. Oh, perfect. Okay, good. Let's see what else. The shoulder seam isn't too far off of where I would wear it. It is a little forward at the neck and a little back at the shoulder. That's fine, I don't care about that. The reason I think about that is because if I wanted to use my set-in sleeve, my personal one that I fit to my armhole on this garment, I just need to note that, like, that's probably not going to be in the same place as where my shoulder seam is, and I may need to move the notch on the cap, and that's not a big deal because we will have the pattern pieces to kind of to compare, right? So some of the other things I noticed are this right here, obviously. This is the princess seam, right? And then this right here, so this is going to be a little harder for you to see on camera, but I know you can see that it's loose here, but can you also see that it's bowing out? So the side seam is curved out, and that just doesn't work on my particular shape. I need a straighter side seam, so that is something else I'm going to fix. Obviously, this wasn't quite right, and the reason is that this was supposed to be trimmed down here at the bottom, like a lot. Like I couldn't get it into the bodice. It's something like that. And I noticed too, like right here, this side here is a little bit, see that? I think this is my sewing. I see it a little over here, like at certain angles you can kind of see. But you're gonna see once I get rid of this, it's going to calm down. So let's make a few of our changes. So I definitely wanna pin this out right here. Shout at me if some of the visuals aren't good enough. And when I'm doing something like this right here, like along a seam, I usually mark where I want this to end. So, because you know, once I'm like, oh, cool, I know how much that is. And then when I'm sitting here with my pattern, I'm like, well, wait, where do I taper this? Do I taper it here, 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 here? You know, so I usually kind of go, all right, I don't really see the excess about right here. And so that'll be the place I taper it to. Now, I could pinch this out and be really precise, but you don't really have to, because there's going to be other things that are going to inform you and limit you, because you can kind of make fabric do a lot of things your paper pattern can't. So don't get too hung up on that. You can kind of go, you know, I know when I'm at about this many inches from here that I want to, that's my target width right there, and that's actually too much right there, by the way. Also, just because you see a lot of excess, don't go to town on it. A little bit goes a long way, all right? You're skimming the body when you're fitting something kind of close. All right, and we note that we also have this big jog here at the armhole now. And that's actually because it's a princess seam coming in at an angle, intersecting with the armhole there. You're not going to have as much fabric on this lower side to meet that. So we would have to adjust our pattern when we get there. It's a little awkward, right? I want to go out in my shoulder, and so let's see if you can kind of see. So here is where the raw edge is, and can you see that my dress form is here? The seam allowance is a 1/2 inch, so that means this shoulder seam is ending way up here. And that is just way too narrow for me. I'm pretty straight across the top, and I don't think I have super broad shoulders, but I don't have narrow shoulders. I definitely fill out shoulders, and it's definitely something I'm adding a tiny bit to at least. So the biggest thing, in my opinion, on this bodice is how high this neck is. So the neck on Trixie, I would say, is about right here. It's about like right here. And this is something that now I have to go, where is this ending along this edge here? So I'm going to get my marker out and start showing you what I would do here. This is what I love about muslins. Actually, we're going to do this side because we're going to fit one side of the bodice. Okay, so you see that's kind of what I'm going for. Let's see if I can tilt her without bonking Loki. Oh, he's going to move. See this right here? So see how I figured out where I want that to end and kind of where I want it to begin. And so if I have the privilege of fitting a dress form, this is awesome, right? Because I could literally take my scissors to this right now and go, all right, if I trim this away, do I see some other issues being resolved, or am I creating another issue? Now, when we're fitting ourselves, we don't have the privilege of the dress form to be able to do what I'm doing right now. Now, anytime you trim over a seam, you just cut the back stitch off. So be really careful, all right? So I'm just gonna pin that because I might be poking it. Loki, no, just go lay down, buddy. He really wants to go out. And I think we're on the right track. Let's get rid of this pin so I can actually trim some more. I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna go like this. And it's already relaxing a lot because I normally would need some sort of shaping back here. Because we have this yoke, we can use that as a shaping seam, but this helped so much. Like, it's already looking so much better over here. And you can see it was kind of sitting above shoulder, see that? And now it's not, now it's sitting flush. We still see this drag line here. Look at that, let's unpin this, relax it a little bit, and repin it. Because the shoulder now is more relaxed. All right, I think we're on the right track, right? This is looking a lot better. Now, you can kind of see this right here sticking out right there. Partly that's my seam allowance, but it is definitely a slight gape. Would I cry over that? No, I wouldn't even fix that. You know, and you know why? Because the dress form is not a real person. This may be worse or better when it's on me. And I think that there's certain things you should just wait and see till your second round of changes. We're just trying to get this to where, for lack of a better term, it's not obnoxious to try on. Because right now this would have been really obnoxious with this being really high up here and tight, and this little gape here would be so distracting that all you do, and I speak from experience, almost every person who has a bust that I fit is 100% focused on these babies when they fit something. They don't look at anything else. They're just thinking about their bust. And the thing is, this area is, I know it doesn't seem like it, but it's a lot easier to fit than some of these other areas. And these areas can't fit great unless you take care of a couple of other areas. So I try now, like I used to be like, no, let's not look at this. Let's just look at this here. But you know what? This is too distracting. If it's fitting really badly or you have something like this, it's really hard to focus on the other things because you're thinking, she's not seeing this. She's not seeing this like really glaring issue on my bust here. And I can't stand it. I can't stand trying this on. I can't stand seeing myself look like this, right? So I gotta let my dog out just a second. Oh my goodness. Shutting the gate. There you go, you little punk. All right, sorry. He has a patio now. Yeah, hi Loki, exactly. If you're in the guild, you know that I got, you know how cats have a catio where they have like that enclosure so the cats can go outside but they're enclosed? I got him what I'm calling a patio. He's a pug. And it's a little gate, little yard. He's already back in. He's like, So anyway. All right, so to me, the biggest problems that for for this bodice on me is this whole armhole area. So we're also going to straighten out the side seam. So let's straighten this out a little bit. Just so it's looking a little more like it's going to be circumference-wise. I'm not really going to change here, the circumference here. I'm not going to change anything else. I'm just straightening it out and getting rid of that little curve. And I see this drafted in a lot on really curvy patterns or knits, for lack of a dart. And I feel like it's one of those things where they work on like 50% of the people. It's the same when you see patterns that have like a full butt adjustment or a regular butt in jeans. They give you both options. And you're like, sweet, I don't have to do that change. That is probably, it's 50-50 if it's gonna work for you, because we're all shaped so differently. So don't despair or take it personally when some of those things that are drafted in for you and you're like, but I do have a full butt, this would be really helpful. Don't despair that it doesn't work for you. It's just a different shape, you know, because we carry things out front and out back or out the side or down low or up high, right? So they can't accommodate all of them. They just give you a good starting point. So, all right. And again, like I'm probably not going to worry about something like this because it's just, the sleeve's going to gobble that up. Like it kind of melts into the sleeve when it's that small. My biggest issue here though is how far out this shoulder needs to come. Like this should be hanging off at least a seam allowance amount off this end here, or close. Honestly, this right here, can you see my cover right here? I added this cover to the Beatrice. The Beatrice doesn't come with this polka dot cover that I have on here. I added it because I really wanted seams on my dress form that indicate the locations on my body. So I drafted this cover with me in mind, like with where I want my princess seams, where I want my apex, where I want my side seams and my shoulders and things like that. So I know that this stopping here is more about, like more where my shoulder is, and this is a very fluid spot in my opinion. So basically that needs to come out about 5/8 of an inch. So we're gonna draft here. What's the best way to keep track of these changes so you can transfer them to the pattern and not lose track of what you did? I am very basic. I have a list, and sometimes like when I'm doing things like this, like trimming things off, that's when you really got to start writing things down, or I save it. And sometimes I'm like, well, shoot, which one's which? I will actually get back up here and go, wait, did this go like this? Oh yeah, this went like this. Okay, so this is my center back. You know, that's a B. I'll draw on here and I'll tape it to my little paper and go, you know, we're going to remove this much at the center back neck. Very literal. I find I've been doing this so long, whether I've been fitting or just drafting in general, and I used to get really bummed out that I would forget something or get turned around. And you know what? I don't know why, like I would get bummed at myself about that. It's so many things to keep track of. And this is the way I look at it now. I had this friend that used to jokingly say, my hard drive's gotten full. And he meant his like brain, the hard drive's full. And that actually eventually kind of helped me go, you know what? My hard drive is full. My brain is focused on how I want this to fit. Why am I trying to keep track of all these little tiny measurements and things like that at the same time? So I keep a list. I draw right on my muslin, and I will do things like this. Like I'm gonna draw in where I'm pinching out on here. Here's my stopping point, because pins fall out. Yeah, exactly, Janelle, exactly. And it does start, you start also going, oh my gosh, am I able even to do this? Like, can I do all these things? You shouldn't be doing so many things at once, but let's be real, most people are going to do more things at once than you probably should be, you know? All right, so now I've drawn out 5/8, so that's a little arrow with the number 5/8 there. And I'm also gonna start drawing in where I think this armhole likely needs to be. It's somewhere like here. This armhole is really, really high for me. And we're gonna have to go out. We're gonna have to like here, we're gonna be like this, right here. Somewhere like that. Remember, the fabric can lie when you get it onto the table and you start trying to transfer these things to your pattern piece. So please be nice to yourself. All right, so the other thing I wanna mark on here, let's mark this as a reminder. We know we just wanna just straighten this out. I'm gonna move my side seam. So this is one thing. I think it's very tight. As you can see, it's very tight across here. But I also think like this side front is going all the way onto my back. Now, I don't think these side seams are perfect, but it's pretty much the same on both sides. You can see this little black tape indicates it, and here's the side seam. I think that what I would do is normally if the circumference was fine down here, I would move this side seam over. I would draw it in, I would take off of the side front and add it to the side back, right? Very literal, just move it over. In this case, I feel like the back is a little too tight. So or the front is a little too tight and the back side seam is back there. I think we could just add to the back, move the side seam forward, and that would allow the front to utilize all of the circumference that's on these front pieces already, because the back is stealing from the front right now, because here's the side seam, right? And here is the side seam on the dress form. So imagine, and let me draw it on this side here. All right, this one's even worse. It's a little off kilter there, right? So if we could imagine what it would be like to let this relax, pull forward a little bit so that the front is not being yoinked onto the back. I feel like that is a little better. And see what happens is now that I'm not pulling right here, it makes you go, is this front a little too long? See how it's going like this? What if I pulled this over? Do I have this going on? Like you can't kind of tell, all because the back is pulling on the front. And this is why I say you don't want to do too many changes at once, just in case one big change affects another. So, hi Michelle, how's it going? All right, so I feel like we've got quite a few things. All this looks really good to me. I love the way the back fits. I think in general, it's this and this are the two big things here, and the neck. Just this little area here. This is probably fits better on someone who's more petite and has a forward neck, right? And while I have a bit of a rounded shape in my upper back, my neck is a little more upright. And I find this issue with a couple other pattern companies too, where I have to carve away the back neck. Because like, especially in the car, when I'm sitting in the car, I will notice it just pulling, it's just like pulling down. I notice this on my tamarack because it's so firm and there's all this binding and batting and stitching, and it's such a firm seam going around the perimeter, there's no give, that it's like wearing a halter in the car. And I realized I just need to scoop out the back neck of these, and it made a big difference. All right, so let's make these changes to our patterns. Let me show you that real quick. You need to lay down, buddy. It is the best napping time of the day for you. Can't believe I have to remind him. Okay, so here are the pattern pieces. Here are my notes. And again, here is this pattern that we are fitting. I'm only doing the bodice today. It's the Lenox Shirtdress. This also only comes in their 12 to 32 range. Not that I'm trying to like sell you a pattern or anything. But all right. So let's set aside our waistband here. And let's lay them all out. Here's our front and our side front, center back and side back, and here's the yoke. This is the sleeve, and then we have the button band, which we didn't make any changes to, so I'm going to set that aside. And here is our little sleeve, which I just don't think I can fit at this point without having the armhole and the back and all that fixed. So that's something that has to happen at a later time. But I'm going to briefly at the end show how I would probably try and check this armhole versus my sloper and sleeve and see if I can just pop my sleeve into this, because that would save me so much time, right? So, all right, so here we have it. And I'm going to start with this back here. And the first thing we're going to do, where's my list? Right here, is we're going to lower the back neck. This is a piece where they give you the whole pattern piece. I love that. But it does mean we need to fold it so that we get a symmetrical change. So we're going to lower this. And now remember, this came onto the front. So we're going to need our front here. When you're doing a lot of pattern changes, especially like this, please do yourself the gift of drawing in all of your seam allowances, and not with a Sharpie. Use a pencil. Okay, I'm only doing Sharpie so you can see what I'm doing here. These are basically the areas we're going to work on. Let's move these off to the side. We're always working on the seam line. And I think that is one thing that there's a lot of people who say, I hear this all the time and I feel like I'm supposed to know this, and I still don't quite understand it. And I think that it's just one of those things where it's very, very straightforward once it clicks for you, why it's so important. And it'll just take making a lot of adjustments. You didn't work on the seam line and you're like, I took 3/4 of an inch out. Why did it end up being less? And it's because you took it out here, you know, you didn't measure it on the seam line. And you thought of the pattern piece, like if you could color it in up to this line, this is the real estate of what's actually visible to the world. The seam allowances could be 2 inches wide. If you made all your changes inside that 2-inch wide, nothing would happen to the real estate of the part that's visible to the world on your body. So it's just one of those things that'll click one day when you start realizing, like, oh, I'm not actually working on the seam line. That's so funny. I thought this shoulder was a little bit, I couldn't get this shoulder to match both times I sewed, and I was like, what the heck? It's a little bit off. You might have to ease this to the shoulder, and I didn't read the instructions, so that could be the case. All right, so here we are. We're going to stack this on the seam line here as if it's sewn. I'm just going to use a weight. And we know that we ended before where that collar or that band is, which is right here, right? So we're going to blend it in like this. Now, here I didn't do it on the seam line, and I do find that when I'm doing something like this, it's not so obvious when you have a problem. You just need to remember that this is going to, actually I don't like that. We want to end well below, before that notch. But working on the seam line is always going to be more accurate, because this isn't where it ends, right? It's going to end back here. And that's okay, because we have a collar that's going to take up this space right here. So that's kind of why, it's just experience. That's why I'm doing it that way, right? So here we have it. And then I sometimes use my rotary knife when I'm doing really casual stuff like this, because I get a nice smooth line like that. And I didn't have to tape it together, right? So now here we have our neck is done. Put a check mark, right? And I wrote lower back neck 3/4 of an inch, to 0 at the neck notch. And that's what I meant by right here, the neck notch there. All right, so now extend shoulders 5/8 of an inch. And now we're gonna need a little bit of paper. I always have these little strips. You know how when you cut out patterns and things, especially printed home patterns, you might get these weird little pieces. I save them for pattern changes. I always need these little strips for things like this. Now this one here, we're gonna fold a piece, but we're also gonna cut it. Let's get rid of this ragged edge a little bit. We need this to go above the shoulder and the yoke seam here, and that's because we're not ending going out, we're not blending that and ending by this yoke seam potentially, right? We need space to go past that. Otherwise you're taping more your paper to it. Something like this, these narrow ones, I always do at least one on the back. I use a lot of tape, I know. I also don't lose pattern pieces anymore. All right, and so this is our shoulder, right? And we're gonna go out 5/8. Now, I would rather do this princess seam change since it intersects with the armhole first and then go out on the shoulder just so I can blend all of that at one time. So we've got this ready. We're not done with it. We're gonna set it there. And we're gonna get our side front out. And the side front here, I wrote, PP always means princess seam for me, which is, it stands for princess panel. Princess PP minus 5/8 inch at armhole. I have my own little cryptic. Drop armhole 1 1/4. That is this part right here at the side seam. Raise waist, shape armhole. Hey Terry, how's it going? So let's draw in our, you can see this ruler has the G on here. That's because if I am using a Sharpie and I'm drawing along the ruler, the Sharpie touches the ruler and the edges get black, and I only use this ruler for this. And then I have a clean one that I use for pencils. And I know this seems really ridiculous, but it just helps me stay cleaner when I'm using my other rulers, because by the end of today, my hands are going to be all black and lined up from doing this. So it just keeps one ruler gross. All right, so we're going to take off, what did I say, 5/8 here. And I'm measuring on from the seam line there. Hi, Julie. Oh, I know my streams were a little bit funky with the scheduling, so I'm not surprised. Yeah, I could, but I just go through so many. All right, and so now we have our little 5/8 right here, right? And we're gonna blend that in. We measured, I didn't measure along that princess seam where we want to stop. And it's 5 1/8. So 5 1/8 from this raw edge along this seam here. That's where I want to blend in. So somewhere like that. So we're going to go like this, and we're going to do the same thing on this side. Something like that. And then eventually, right before I blend my armhole, I'm gonna make sure that these seam lengths are the same. And if your notches match perfectly, like they're supposed to, you could go from just like the notch, like from here to here and here to here, right? These, I don't think do. I think you ease between the notches or something, so. How's it going, Julie? All right, so now we have that. It's going to be more like that shape. Now this is a good point to talk about not judging your changes by the way they look. Because you're probably going, that's kind of a lot, Saremy. Are you sure? You saw on the muslin what the muslin told me, right? So this is the point where a lot of people will stop adjusting something because I'm adding my seam allowance back, by the way, to this new seam line and blending it to the raw edge there. See, the red now is parallel to the green, all right? So I think that when you start sometimes seeing your pattern pieces and you're like, but that doesn't look normal. It's really easy to do that, but the thing is, you don't get to do that. Like, that's not, you can't tell by looking at the paper what it's really gonna be like. You could see on the muslin though, right? The muslin told you, this guy is not coming to streams again. Come here. It's really hard for a potato-shaped being to jump up onto a chair sometimes. All right, so now doesn't this look like, oh, that doesn't look so bad. Oh, is that a little narrow? Just don't worry about it. It's fine on you, right? One way to kind of combat these doubts is to flip your pattern piece over and look at it from the back. And when you don't see all the changes, cuts, tape, markings, it's a lot easier to sell it to yourself. So, yeah, do you want to see him? Come here, Bubs. Yeah, he's like, what? Oop. People want to see you. Where's the mouse? Here we go. What's going on? He's nervous. I don't hold him like that. He is a good potato. I just know at the microphone. He's a sleepy pug. 20-pound potato. Here you go, Bubs. Exactly. Loki, rise. You're welcome, my Debbie. He's very calm, yeah. He's calm unless there's TREATS's nearby, and there are. He's looking at me. Oh, good, Tiffany. Anytime you need Loki stuff, let me know. He's always within 36 inches of me. So, all right, so let me put it back. Oh, I keep thinking this little iron is my mouse. I think that's why I moved it away on my other thing. Okay, so now we can kind of look at some of these armhole changes. We can kind of start. So we're going to stack this up on the new seam line. And you can't really stack your whole princess seam right up, right? So we're going to do the best we can. I'm always doing this trick where I lift the paper up. And it's kind of like when you see this line, to see if it's stacked on the other, if you do it quickly, you can see that it's stacked. All right, we're going to use some removable tape this time so that we can pick this up and move it a little bit. Yeah, my armhole's really weird too. I think I saw your little note, Terry. It's not weird, it's perfect. All right, so let's get our other side back. We also have to straighten out this seam here, right? Let's straighten out that seam first, and here's our yoke. We're not really changing this piece at all, so we can actually set it aside. So this side seam change, we're going to draw in our seam allowance points at the waist and at the armhole, and we're going to connect the dots. Just like this. And now we're going to add back our seam allowance, and we might need a little paper here to fill in a little tiny corner. Like that. And now we can trim this off, but we're not going to trim up here yet. All right. And now we're going to, well, I'll just keep it connected. And we're going to transfer this to the side back. Like that. And I'm going to trim it to match. We're going to have to check the side seam length at the end anyway. So we'll leave it up there at the top. I'm straightening it because it had that bubble, and that bubble looked like a bubble on me. It doesn't look like that on everybody, but it doesn't work for me. I need a really straight side seam. Loki cam. I've thought about it, but he kind of moves around sometimes, you know. So, all right. Now we have this yoke. So one of my cheats for adding seam allowance when it's a straight seam like this is I will double the amount like that, right? That's a 1 inch and it's a 1/2 inch seam allowance on each piece. And now I can just line it up along that line, and that will take up all of the seam allowance like that. It doesn't work for all seams, but it works for like shoulders, side seams, yokes, things like that that are straight. All right, so now we have this. And we're going to put these together up here at the top, lining it up at the neck, stacking the seams, and we're going to draw in that 5/8. We're going to bring the shoulder out. And we're measuring this along this seam line here, the shoulder seam line here. So you're not just going like along this parallel to this outer cut edge, you're measuring it on the seam line, right? And if you were really to go by your, like working on the seam lines, you'd measure from this point here, this juncture of the shoulder and the armhole, right? Go 5/8 out, which would be an 1/8 past that cut edge. And then we'd have our seam allowance like this. Whoops, I just did 5/8, that right there. So we're going out to here, that is our goal. So we're gonna need some paper on this piece and on this piece probably. And you don't wanna tape your paper so that it's stuck to another pattern piece. So we're going to lift that up, make sure we don't attach that to this front. It starts to get a lot, but it's gonna get super clean in just a second. All right, so we know that this is our goal at the top, and then down here we want to deepen the armhole 1 1/4. Let's measure this. I want to be able to see that. Something like this, like that, and like that. And these two, I still need to make sure they'll sew to each other. But this is it. This is kind of, I actually like to look at this like this. I'm going to look at it first so that I'm looking at it right side up. And I'm going to use a pencil at first. And we're going to go like this. We're kind of sketching it in here. Don't feel like this has to be perfect, right? You are doing so many changes. I'm doing so many changes. I have to do another muslin. I mean, I could definitely take a chance and sew it in my real fabric. I feel pretty confident. But when I get into these armhole things that are this significant, I would do a muslin next. I want to know before I cut my nice fabric. Muslin's cheap. It might take me 10 minutes to sew the muslin, but that's better than a lifetime with a garment that I won't wear, you know? Okay, so there we have our front. I think actually this is going to change a little bit, but we're gonna go like that. All right, so now we've got our we can take this off, secure this with tape, and we're going to still set this side and make sure we true up the side seam. And now we have our back. And the reason I like to do this with the front to the back is you really need a nice transition up here. You can't just like add it to one, add it to the other, because you might get a point right here. You might get something that looks, you know, like this, right? And we don't want that. We want a nice smooth armhole. I won't make the sleeve adjustments until I know the bodice is right. You know? All right, so now we have this front has been trued up, and we did the front, you know, with the back in mind. And so now we can trace this onto the back like that. So we have this red line to sort of inform us. Something like this. And then we have our shoulder seam. So we're kind of looking at this, and now this is when I usually, and you don't have to do it this quickly, but I will look at the side seam now and go, all right, just because I'm here right now, I can now true the back to match the front, and the back is a little lower, or the front is a little lower, so we're gonna now do this. So there we go. That's going to be our back armhole. We're going with this line here. I draw an arrow when I have multiples in different color. And now we can trim this, and everything's going to look nice and clean. And I'm trimming it off. All right. And then we're going to trim this. Let's pick this up and reuse it. Okay, so this piece is ready. Do we need to secure any loose pieces of paper? No, that looks good. You always need to check that. This is looking good. This one definitely needs some paper securing, but we can get rid of that. And then we look at that seam right there. See, we added just this little tiny wedge. That's all we added. Trim off that. This is good. Here, we can just trim off this little tail. We can secure this. Save this piece of removable tape. What else have we not done? We shaped the armhole, we dropped it, we changed the princess line, we extended the shoulders, side back, lowered the armhole, and now we just need to do this waist thing. Center front, extend shoulder, princess seam. All right, our last thing is this waist. And we're going to use only our side back and our side front. You will multiple times true the same seam, and it's a smart thing to do, because if you don't do it along the way, like say you're like, well, I know I'm going to have to do this. I'm not going to true that side seam. Like I just trued it, meaning I made them match, so I made them true to one another, right? And then I will then do this change, and I have to true this again because I'm going to go through this seam here. And the reason I do it is so that this is accurate when I'm starting. If these were off and I was doing that, it's going to create this little cascade of issues. Did you need to add? It was already in there. So I've kind of worked along that raw edge. See you, Janelle? All right, so now here we have this. We're going to move this side seam. Actually, that's not what I want to do. We're going to move the side seam forward. This is a pattern piece. So we're going to attach a piece of paper. I think of all the things I'm doing today, this change is probably the one that I might have to look at. Besides like the drastic armhole change that I did, that I have to definitely check in with that with a new muslin. This right here, the fact that I'm only adding to the side back, that's a little unconventional, because the better way to do this would be to place the side seam where you want it. So then we would take a little off here, add a little to here, or vice versa. Actually, we take off a little here, add to here, if we were moving it forward a little bit, right? If we wanted the side seam here, we would take this off and tape it to here. But honestly, I feel like the angle is a little off, and I like where this seam up here is in the right spot. It's the seam back here that's not. What point is pattern companies sell you patterns? Promise. I've just made it's just stitch Celeste, customized bust sizes, apex is too high, and several other adjustments needed. Oh yeah. The point is pattern companies sell you patterns promising. Wait, are you done? Maybe you're typing more. You're probably typing more. It probably limits your amount, huh? All right, so we're gonna move this side seam forward, and let me draw it in here so you can see it right there. And then let's draw in our side seam there. So we're gonna move this forward 1 1/4, and we're gonna draw in our waist as well. So this promising too much. Yeah, maybe. I mean, you know what I think? I have a lot of thoughts about this, because somewhere along the line between like 30 years ago and now, sewists expect pattern companies to teach them how to sew and fit them perfectly. And that was never assumed before now, ever. No one ever expected patterns to fit them perfectly or the pattern company to teach you how to sew. Those are different things. They know that, people know that it's like, we're infinite people, and it's you know, sizest to assume that everybody's gonna fit into their patterns, right? I don't look at pattern companies promising me anything except giving me tools. Like I feel like, hey, we're gonna give you cup sizes, which gives you tools to work with, so you might have a starting point. They're giving you a better starting point, hopefully, right? And busts in particular are so hard to fit. They're so different person to person, and I fit a lot of busts, and they all look really different. Sometimes you will see the exact same thing over and over and over. Like maybe everybody has to raise the apex when they make your pattern. Then that indicates an issue. If everybody has to do that, that means that you're too far from the standard or the middle of the road. Person to person and side to side. Yeah. It's kind of like the "Do Your Ears Hang Low" song. So I think like, and I see a lot of beginners, and this is the other, I think what the one thing pattern companies do wrong is tell you all their patterns are beginner friendly. That's my problem. I think saying that it's a beginner friendly pattern, if it's not, that's the problem. Because there's so many skill sets with sewing. There's learning how to use your machine, there's learning how to fit, there's learning how to construct something together, like how it spatially goes together, and there's learning how to sew. There's 4 distinct sets of skills, and I often myself, as someone who does things on YouTube, I feel overwhelmed 24 hours a day by this, because I feel like I can do all these things, but I don't get to specialize in any of them on my channel, and it's very overwhelming for me, because if I were to do whatever I wanted, that's not what people want, right? They want me to only fit pants, or they want me to only construct patterns from companies exactly the way they gave me the pattern. So it's really hard to like expect a pattern delivered to you to do all those things, but people do. And that's a really hard bridge to gap. They want you to buy a pattern. That's a marketing tool. Absolutely. They want you to buy their pattern. Not all patterns are beginner friendly. And I really hate that part of it. So, and learning how to pick fabric. Oh my God, right? That's like, that dictates everything. So yeah, it's, I think when they're giving you more tools, like here's some cup sizes, here's some a sleeve with the full bicep and without, those are great things. Like, I think that is a marketing tool. The cup sizes thing, though, to be fair, patterns should have that. Like, they kind of should have that anyway, because busts are it's so variable. You could measure 20 30, 50 people across the shoulders, and I kid you not, they'd probably all be within 1.25 inches of each other. But if you took 50 people and did busts, holy heck, every single person would be different. So I think giving you a pattern with either the high bust measurement in the size chart, or telling you what cup size they've drafted for, or giving you cup sizes, that should be sort of standard. One of those three things or all of those things. But the other things, I don't think it's up to them to teach me to sew, and I will die on that hill. I know people really get upset with me saying that, but they don't need to teach me how to sew. And I really wish they wouldn't write their pattern instructions as if I don't know how to sew, because it's more confusing. There's so many ways to do it. Yeah, right, Amy? Cup sizes for butts would be kind of nice. All right, I'm almost done here, and I don't want to get too sidetracked like I'm known for. That's when we use the, we have the perfect emote today to, this is my tangent emote. It's more appropriate today than ever. You're not a beginner, Julie. Yeah, exactly, Tiffany. Yeah, and weigh the same. They could all weigh the same. Yep. Okay, so my last little change here is I'm going to shift this side seam forward. And that means that if you were to put these grain lines parallel to one another, this is why I'm telling you this one, I feel like if there was a pattern drafter in the audience, they're going to have an issue with me doing this one, this change here. Right, so if we have these grain lines, if I kick this one and make it straighter, right, so we're going to just put a 1 1/4 inch mark. Let's see if we can kind of do something like that. And then we connect the dots here. Wait, I did that in the wrong spot. This is what I want right here, right? We connect these two dots. This is the seam line. And then we add our seam allowance back. I have now changed the angle of this back side seam. And it's not the same angle as the front, right? If I cover this up, you can see it better. Because if these grain lines are parallel, do you see how that one is looking angled this way and this one's more straight now? This would be the most questionable thing I'm doing today. But I do think it's something you can revisit, right? And what would be more accurate is to probably, do this one a little less and move this one out a little more, right? Split the difference, do 5/8 this way, this one 5/8 this way. And then if you don't like the position, you can move it again, right? See you, Michelle. All right, so let me true this up, all right? So now we're going to put this all together. And we're going to true it up here. Going to move it like that. And then we need to change our waistband. Remember, what am I always telling you guys when you're doing changes? What are you always asking yourself? What seam have I affected, right? What seam have I affected? And here I've affected this, so we have to pick up this band and we need to change it to reflect that. What does it affect? Yeah, star student. She knows. So this is actually staying the same. We're only adding to the back because this is a cheeky way that I'm getting a little more waist circumference. But I think this is definitely something I need to refine in my second muslin. We're just trying to figure out what does it need. And to be honest, like this is also because I had originally not used the correct bodice. And I sort of altered it so that it would be the correct bodice, but it's not perfect. Let's get rid of all these little things here. And let's try on my new bodice because we've made all the changes. And I have the new bodice. So we'll take a look at the old again. What have I done? What have I done? Do you ask it like that, Sylvia? Yeah, exactly, Amy. It's a good question. So yeah, once I have the bodice, and this is another thing, like I say this to you guys occasionally, but when you're fitting it, I think you should fit it without the sleeve. Now, if you really want to see the sleeve, like there could be a really good reason you want to see the sleeve early on. You can just put one sleeve on. Sorry, I just inhaled wrong. But the thing is with when you only have one sleeve on, just know that when you try the muslin on, the muslin's gonna pull toward the sleeve side. So every time you take a photo or look in the mirror, make sure you're adjusting it. You're putting the center in the center, shake out the back, center in the center, shake out the back, right? And then make sure that you're getting that true, because it's going to pull toward the side with the sleeve because your arm is pushing on that sleeve, right? It's pushing this out right here. Right? So, but I still think it is nice to be able to see your garment, at least with one sleeve, but fitting it without the sleeve is better. You'll get there faster. And then you keep track of all the things you've done to that armhole, and you can update your sleeve. All right, so here we go. We've straightened out this side seam because it had that little bubble in it. We pinched out the princess seam. We have our deeper armhole. I brought out the shoulder, and then I lowered that back neck. You reclaim all my pins. This was the sleeve band. I decided not to sew it on because I knew it was a disaster. Okay. Oh, I didn't press the seam up. I thought I did. Oh no, it gets pressed down. I think that's what I did wrong, yeah. I realized I was pressing it up when I should have been pressing it down. It's always hard to put something on a dress form. It's very grabby. Takes me a little bit. I'm sorry. Okay, now I get the center centered. Yeah, I think this is a little long now, unless I have it in the wrong place. All right, so now we're going to pin this to itself. So when you're pinning on or fitting on a dress form, you should always pin the muslin to itself, never to the dress form. It should hang free. It makes a huge difference. Because you can cheat, and it can lie when you do it the other way. I kind of pick it up and then I let it fall. It's too far back, I can tell. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Now we have a little bit more of a gape here. I actually might let that go. It's a little tight across the armhole here. See that? Is that because of a shoulder angle? Is it because of the neck? We just want to get it to where we think that's how it would feel on us. But I think that looks already so much better. I think that if I were to do this, so one thing I notice, if something is too long on me, it will sort of bump into like the body down here, and then it kind of creates a like a bubbly kind of fit. So I've learned that if I just sort of fold it up, make sure it's hanging free, right? And you know, this has seam allowance on it. So let's say, oh, maybe I only need to sew it and that 1/2 inch seam allowance is gone. Would that be better? Like, don't despair yet. Make sure that you're looking at the finished size of the thing. So what would I do next? I mean, this looks pretty good. I think that this might be a little snug right there. Muslin shows every wrinkle. I'm not too worried about that. In real fabric, it'll look better. Let's see about this side seam change. I think we were on the right track with, see how much looser the front is now that we shifted that side seam forward? Look at that. So yeah, maybe what we do is we take off of the front. For this particular style, you can tell it's very close fitting in the photos. And I feel like I really like closer fitting things, but lately I'm finding if I leave myself a little bit of room, they're a little more flexible for me and I'm a little more comfortable. So trying to get a good fit that looks close fitting without it being too big. Because there's a difference between sizing up and adding more ease, right? I think we talked about this last week. Did we talk about that last week? I just was talking about it with someone I was helping. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good. We have this tiny bit of armhole space here. Again, if I'm looking at it on the seam line, what are we talking? A little bit. If it really bugged me, I could take it out here at the yoke. That's where I would do that. I think I could open this up a little bit here. And now let's look at this neckline here, right? We have the band, and if we were to look at the seam line, like where this neck is actually hitting us, I think this is really close. It looks a little close fitting here, like, I don't want to say tight, but it definitely you can see how smooth it is. You can see a little bit of rippling there. Remember, this is my end of my armhole here. I would look at that. In real fabric, like what if I made this in a linen? You know, this would be a drastically different fitting garment if I made this in a linen and I made it in a poplin. If I made it in a poplin, I better make sure it's fitting pretty good because the poplin is super unforgivable, right? It's very firm, it's tightly woven, there's not a lot of give. That's where you really want to make sure you get your ease sort of nailed, because if the poplin isn't going to be forgiving, you better have enough ease to move around in the garment. Linen, you're probably going to feel a little sloppy by the end of the day, even a really close fitting thing, unless you did something like underline it or something, you know, like and stabilized it. So you're going to get a very different fitting garment between fabrics with something like this. So last thing I'm going to show is how I would start looking at if I wanted to use my sleeve from my bodice. So we're going to get out all of our armhole pieces. I'm going to try and go through this quickly. We're going to sew them all together. If you guys have any questions, just let me know too. Next week, I'm fitting a loose blouse. I'm kind of doing this firmly because I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to line it up on the armhole as if it's sewn. And I'll just use the stapler to give myself a little gift. Sewing by stapler. So there's my shoulder fold line there. See, here's the seam, here's the shoulder fold. Now it's a little hard with my manila, my pattern being on manila. But I should probably have a soft copy of my sloper handy for things like this. So now we're going to line up the underarms. Oof. Can I do it? I'm not sure I can with the manila. Look at how small this front armhole looks. Like, see how tight that is? We'll just maybe walk it. We can go, we could actually do this. My table surface feels very small right now. Too many pattern pieces here. All right. So now we can kind of start looking at this armhole and going, all right, are we close to my sloper here? And you can see my sloper has more ease than this one. So let's line it up at the shoulder point there, right here. They both have the same seam allowance, so I can stack them up like this, and I'm sort of splitting the difference. It's actually a pretty decent, this one here is more carved out. It goes to right here. So when I have this, like the ease difference, this is really easy. Like, so if my sloper has more ease, and I just wanted to use my sleeve, I would trim this ease, or I would take it off of the ease of the cap, or maybe split the difference, basically bringing it in a little bit. And you can see, look how high this cap is. Look at the difference, right? Now, this is to be expected because remember how we brought the shoulder seam out? It's this was just a really short cap. It's really wide though, like there's a lot up here. It's a really interesting shape. But this right here is going to be more about like where your armhole is sitting on the body, like here, this underarm point here. If this were a super loose shirt with a lot of ease, this would be sticking out further. This would be sticking out further too. Between these notches, we're going to be looking at the cap height and the ease that's built into the sleeve so that it fits you really nicely. So, hi Tracy, how's it going? So yeah, I think that I would probably measure this armhole, measure this one, which I know the measurement's already on there, and then I would adjust for this little bit here, and I would try my sleeve on this and just see how it fits. This one also has a forward cap, so you can kind of tell that it's a little bit smaller here, and it's kind of pushing. It probably looks more obvious when I do this. You see how it's kind of like leaning over here? So that's part of it too. So yeah, I could probably try this sleeve out on this armhole and see how it does. and see how it fits, because I think it's close enough that I would have a better fit with my sloper. This one, I had tried that muslin on, and the sleeve, it was a hard nope for me. It wouldn't have worked. It just felt like it was crawling up onto my body, and the sleeve was up here. I know they did an update with this sleeve and gave a higher cap, and I know I'm using the right one. So I feel like it's just a really narrow shoulder fit for me. So, but I think I've loved this dress since it came out, since before I was even able to sew for myself much, and I was just had the factory and I was working, you know, on my business. So it's kind of fun to like revisit this. So, all right, well, I'm gonna call it there. Next week, I'm doing the loose blouse, and I'm gonna be using the Piper boho tunic by Wardrobe by Me. And then hopefully I'm releasing my new pattern, which is the Happy Trails travel bag. I am having it, this isn't the computer I do a lot of that on, and that one is in the shop. I had a weird thing happen last week, unfortunately, so I'm a little worried about that because it's pretty much done. But the pattern is in that computer. It's not in that computer. It is in that. No, it's not in that computer, but the program is. So, yeah. All right. Loki's like, she just said the sound like she's gonna get off. Yeah, no problem, Amy. And you know I'll help you anytime in the guildies too. So, yeah, no problem, Glory. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, and that's, I think, part of my point is just make your muslin, suck it up, make the muslin, do some adjustments, make another muslin, and it'll probably be a lot closer. Make your final garment, live with it for a bit, revisit it if you want. Because even if you get it perfect, you're definitely gonna have some ideas for adjustments after living with it for a bit, and that's why I feel like getting it really perfect, it's never done. There's always gonna be something. So don't let it stop you from sewing things for yourself. Yeah, anyway. Oh, Loki is stuck. He wants to look out the window. All right, you guys, I'll see you next week. And don't expect to be perfect because it is probably perfect. It's good. It's great. Bye, guys.